everybody, and welcome to another beautiful Thursday morning. You're listening to Bhavani at iEat Green on the Progressive Radio Network. And I have a great show for you today. My guest will be Laura Chepner, and she'll be coming on in just a little bit to talk about her new book called Veducated, an educator's guide for vegan inclusive teaching. And she'll come on and talk to us about her book, and she is an educator herself, so she can really give us some great perspective. But first, I want to talk to you about some things going on in and around the news. Of course, yesterday was Earth Day, and so this whole week there's lots of Earth Day celebrations going on. Last year, I participated in Earth Day celebration with the youth movement, marching in the streets, actually down in lower Manhattan, and there were hundreds of thousands of people celebrating all across the world for Earth Day. And this year, obviously we cannot take place and celebrate Earth Day out on the streets, but we still need to recognize Earth Day and participate as much as we can. So there is a live digital event that's going to be taking place from yesterday through tomorrow, and that's an Earth Day live digital event, and I have a link to that on my website, or you can just, I'm sure, Google Earth Day live digital event, and you'll find the link to that. But we need to stay vigilant and stay really organized to raise the awareness that just like this COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic has raised awareness about the healthcare crisis, we have scientists yelling at us and highlighting the science behind the climate crisis, and we really just cannot let up. It's easy to get distracted with what's going on right now, but meanwhile, here in our country, the current administration is doing everything they can to roll back the standards we have that aren't that great to start with for the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. They're just trying to roll everything back. They're rolling back regulations for car emissions. They're allowing gas and oil companies to drill on public lands. They are pushing through pipelines that we have protested over the years to fight. And so it is just not a time to let up at all. So we need to keep pushing. We also need to get all of New York State and everyone to divest from all fossil fuels. We know that fossil fuels are not the future and not the way we should be going. We need to be investing in renewable energy sources. And so there are links on my website to get in touch with Tom DiNapoli, who is the New York State Comptroller, to tell him that we want to divest the state pension plan from fossil fuels, and wherever you live, you need to do the same. Find out who is your state comptroller and let them know that we need to divest from fossil fuels. This was a movement that was really successful in fighting the apartheid many, many years ago in South Africa, and it was very successful, and it has been working now successfully for many years in this country. 350.org is one of the organizations that started this movement, and we just need to keep it going. Another thing that I ask you to pay attention to is school food service providers. They are still putting together lunches and breakfasts for so many school children who depend on school lunch, and we need them to have protective personal equipment, PPE equipment, personal protective equipment. And right now, many of them are working without that. They're coming in with their own bandanas or handkerchiefs across their face, but they really deserve good equipment to help keep them safe. So many have gotten sick already, and we need them. They are essential workers, and we need them to keep feeding our people. And there's just so many people that have come out to really stand up to what's going on right now. And it's just really amazing. Sometimes these crises really highlight people that are true heroes. And of course, we know the people in the front lines in the hospitals, healthcare workers, but we also have the farmers and the farm workers and the cashiers at the grocers and the auto mechanic and the gas station attendant and all these people that, unfortunately, many of them get minimum wage, and yet they are considered essential, and they deserve to be able to make a decent living. So, this is something that I hope we all don't forget when we go back to whatever the new norm is. The likelihood of going back to what we considered normal doesn't look like it's going to be happening. So we're going to have a new normal. We don't know what that is yet, but we need to really value these essential workers that are really helping get food on our plates from the whole food chain, starting from the planting and growing and harvesting to the truckers, to the cashiers. If you can sign up for a CSA, so many of them are filling up, but for those that don't know, community-supported agriculture is one of the best ways to get fresh fruits and vegetables, especially during this pandemic time. And it is a direct market directly to the farmers, so you're really helping the farmers. There are other organizations or businesses that are popping up that are kind of acting as a middle person between the farmer and the consumer and, making a profit on this. And, we appreciate business and the need for everyone to make a living. It's really great if you can go directly to the farmers and give them the money that they need to keep doing the vital work that they are doing. I have been giving Zoom cooking classes. Last night was my second Zoom cooking class. We made a tempeh black bean vegetable fajitas, and it's just so great to offer these classes, during this time while we're all sequestered indoors. It's a really wonderful time to start cooking again. So many people depend on going to restaurants for their food, and it's really not just something that is so healthy to do, but for me, it's really my passion. I love cooking, and it's just really exciting to be able to share that love and passion with everyone who is joining these Zoom classes. So if you're interested, there are links on my website on the homepage where you can sign up for the Zoom classes. I'm doing them every Wednesday night from 5 to 6, and I've designed them so that you actually can cook along with me. I will send you the recipe ahead of time so you can try to get all the ingredients in hand. If you can't have everything, you can just watch or you can substitute things, and I'm happy to, you can ask questions during the class, and it is in real time. We will cook together starting at 5, and by 6 o'clock, you're sitting down to a delicious homemade plant-based meal. So, definitely sign up and join my iEat Green cooking classes. And I'm offering these for free. And, as I was talking about business, we all need to make a living. And, this is an idea I had of doing before the pandemic actually hit. But now that the pandemic is here, it just didn't feel right to me to actually charge for these. So I am offering these classes free of charge because I really want everybody to be cooking healthy. And it's my pleasure to share my knowledge with all of you and help you get cooking. I have also shared some really great links on my website and in this week's blog. So many parents are now finding themselves stuck at home with their kids and becoming homeschool teachers, and there's some great websites to help navigate you through this. One is the Spirit Promise Rescue Farm. They are having weekly classes on animals and their environments and really engage your kids in building a connection to the farm and to the animals, and that's great. Action for Healthy Kids is another wonderful website. They have great resources like mindfulness, journaling, and breathing, kids yoga, cooking classes for kids, so really great things. And also Green Beets, another organization. I interviewed them a couple of months ago. They came out with 2 guides, the New York City Coronavirus Family Resource Guide and also the Coronavirus Food Education Guide. And both of these, are really great guides. They help you source, shop, and store groceries in a healthful way. They also have recipes and budget-friendly meals. I haven't looked at all of them, so I don't actually know how many are plant-based versus animal-based. You need to look at that. But there's also another website, Edible Schoolyard, and they have Edible at Home, also with some great activities. So there's a lot out there for you parents that are at home doing homeschooling. And I just want to share those with you. So those are on my website. And there's another great organization I want to share with you, Community Solidarity. I've talked about them before. They're a nonprofit organization. They are also plant-based. They collect food that is approaching the expiration date, which I actually have an article on my website about expiration dates. So often those are really arbitrary and don't really have much basis in reality. Very often the expiration dates are just, like I said, they're arbitrary, and you can really eat things way past those dates. But anyway, they collect food from supermarkets and groceries. Many of them are organic. Whole Foods, Trader Joe's are some of the most generous donors to this organization, and they get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds of produce and fresh vegetables, as well as flours and bread that they distribute in different community share programs throughout Long Island, including they have one day where they're actually in Bed-Stuy. And so this is a great organization. They have served over 10,000 meals last weekend alone. They're just doing unbelievable work. There's great articles written about them. You can go to their website, communitysolidarity.org. I have links on my website. They're also looking for volunteers, and of course they're looking for monetary donations. So if you are able to donate to that, it would be so appreciated. It's really a really phenomenal organization. So check that out. And then, of course, I want to share with you my weekly recipe. This week, the recipe that I made, and I'm finding, I am making more pasta than I usually do because it's something that is shelf stable, and I have it, and I have all different shapes and sizes and grains in pasta. But this is a mushroom and pea carbonara with a cashew mascarpone, and it's just so delicious. And one of the things in my vegan cooking is that I really feel like food is such a mood enhancer and can really lift one's spirits, and having food that is comfort food and really satisfying is so important. If we're trying to encourage people to eat more plant-based, it's not going to be successful if they're feeling like they're being deprived. So it's really important to find ways to make foods that they connect to in a plant-based way. So this mushroom and pea carbonara is really that. So you want a pound of organic pasta, whether it's rice pasta, millet and brown rice pasta, whole wheat pasta, or just organic semolina pasta. All's good. Whatever you have in your cupboard or whatever you like. 3 stalks of celery, diced fine. 2 carrots that you're also going to mince. You can either dice them fine, or I actually put them in my food processor and pulsed it just a little bit to get them into small diced pieces. 1 organic pepper, seeds removed, also diced. Using different colors is really nice. Orange or red, if you have it, is great. 1 onion chopped. I had lots of oyster mushrooms here, so I used 8 cups of oyster mushrooms. You can use a variety depending on what you have in your house. If you have dried mushrooms, you can use those as well as some part of it. 1 cup of fresh or frozen peas. I always have frozen peas in my freezer. That's one of the few vegetables that I actually buy frozen because they're just so easy to add a burst of color to almost anything. 3 tablespoons of tomato paste, a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, 1 cup of vegetable broth, a 1/2 cup of cashews. You want to soak those for 2 hours. If you're thinking about this last minute and you haven't gone to soak them, if you soak it in hot water, it actually will soak a little bit quicker, so you can get away with doing it for less time. I've actually done it just for 20 minutes, and it's been okay. 1/2 cup of red wine, 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of dried basil, 1/2 teaspoon dried thyme, 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, a half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, and that's optional. Obviously, that makes it a little bit of a little spicy, and we like that. But if you're cooking with little kids that wouldn't like that, just leave it out. 3 tablespoons of chopped fresh Italian parsley, 1.5 teaspoons salt, and 1 teaspoon of pepper. And you're going to start by coating the bottom of a cast iron pan with some olive oil, and you're going to saute the onions, carrots, and celery for a few minutes. Then add the garlic and continue cooking for about 5 more minutes. While that's cooking, cut the mushrooms into strips, and you want to wipe the mushrooms down first. When you're cooking with fresh mushrooms, you never want to wash them under water because they are so spongy and they will just absorb the water and then they'll be soggy in your recipe. So you can take a damp cloth and just wipe them. That's what I do. And so you're going to wipe the mushrooms clean and then cut them into strips. The oyster mushrooms are really different than a lot of other mushrooms, and they come in a big glump all together. And you're just going to cut through them and make strips out of the mushrooms if that's what you're using. If you're using other kinds of mushrooms, you just can cut them either into slices or into quarters, whatever you like. But you're going to add the mushrooms after the onions, carrots, and celery start getting soft. You're going to add those, and you're going to cook them for about 10 minutes. You want the mushrooms to really start getting crispy. They're kind of taking the place of a bacon, I guess, in a regular carbonara type of dish. So you're going to cook the mushrooms until they start getting crispy. You're going to add the peppers, the dried herbs, and the tomato paste, and cook that for 5 more minutes. You're going to deglaze the pan with the red wine and the vegetable broth and let the mixture cook down for about 10 minutes until the liquid is reduced by half. In a mini food processor, you're going to mix the drained cashews with a half a cup of fresh water, and you're going to pulse that until it's completely smooth, scraping down the sides of the processor to incorporate all of the cashews. Then you're going to add that cashew mixture to the sauce, taste it, and adjust the salt and pepper to your taste desire, and then add the fresh parsley. And while that's all happening, you can put the pot of boiling water on, or a pot of water on to boil. Add some salt to the water. And people always ask how much salt. And depending on the size pot you're using, put the salt in the water and taste it. It should taste like salted water, the same saltiness as a broth would be, a miso broth or a chicken broth or whatever broth you eat. But there should be a saltiness to it, but it should not be like overly salted like when you gargle with salt water. So you're going to salt the water, and you're going to cook the pasta so that it's al dente, meaning that it's not overcooked. And you're going to time it so that the pasta comes out around the same time that this sauce is ready, because you really want to put the pasta into this pot of the sauce and stir it up, and you let it finish in the pot with the sauce. So I saved some of the pasta water. I actually have one of these pasta pots where the insert is the colander. So I can just lift that out of the boiling water, pour the pasta right into my saucepan with the sauce, and then you can add a little bit of the pasta water, like a ladle full at a time, if you need to thin the sauce out at all. Some carbonara sauces are really dry, and that's what people really like. And some people like their carbonara more Alfredo-like, a little creamier. So whichever way you like it, you can adjust it by using the pasta water. And you're just going to mix that up. You're going to garnish it with the fresh parsley, and that is it. It's really delicious. It comes together very quickly in less than a half an hour. And it is just delicious. And, of course, I served it with a side salad. You can serve it with some garlic bread, too, if you'd like. And it's just wonderful. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to all of you my guest this week, Laura Chepner. She is the author of Veducated, an educator's guide for vegan inclusive teaching. And this guide book is really for education professionals who want to learn more about veganism and how to engage children and parents who are vegan and how to incorporate the lessons and policies to be inclusive. The same way we want, all special needs kids to feel inclusive. Kids that are vegan very often don't feel like the lesson plans or certainly the school lunches, make them feel inclusive. So her book is really wonderful. She is an educator herself, and this book is honest, informative, and it's a practical guide that contains useful facts, hints, tips, and ready-to-use lesson plans, all with the vegan child's viewpoint in mind. And so it's my pleasure to introduce to all of you Laura. Laura, are you with me?
Hello, yes. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I guess we got the time a little confused there in the UK. You must have daylight savings time as well as us.
I guess so. Yeah, it's just coming up to about 9:15 now here in the evening. I'm usually 2 hours into my bedtime sleep by now, but I
Oh,
was so honored that you invited me onto the show that I've forced myself to stay awake for you.
good. Well, I'm glad you did. So, how long have you personally been vegan?
So I became vegan when I was weaning my now 6-year-old daughter from breast milks onto solids. So I'd probably say, yeah, so coming up to about, yeah, 6 years.
Uh huh. And before that, you were vegetarian?
That's right, yeah. When I was about 11 years old, I'm 37 now. When I was about 11 years old, I became vegetarian, and was vegetarian the whole way up until becoming vegan for the animals.
Uh huh. It's really interesting. I was reading your book, and when you said that it was tongue that got you to become vegetarian, I think it was for me too. I mean, I actually became vegetarian back in the 1970s when I read the book Diet for a Small Planet. But I remember the first time that somebody was eating tongue, and I saw the little bumps all over the tongue, and I said, "What are all those bumps?" They said, "Well, it's a tongue," and I was like, "You mean it's a real tongue?" And I just
Yeah.
couldn't kind of grasp that it was really a tongue, and that it was so huge. It was a cow's tongue, and
I just
so
could not get my head around it. Yeah, could not
yeah,
get my head
really,
around it. It was something that when my grandmother asked me if I wanted to eat a tongue sandwich, I can still remember where we were stood and the smells in the air. And yeah, it was such a pivotal moment in my life, and I'm glad that she did. I'm glad that it led me onto a path of discovery and wanting to learn more about the meat industry. I've never looked back.
uh huh, yeah. And then also somewhere in the book you were talking about, a young person asking, if you eat chickens. And I found that interesting because I know I've had kids say, I eat chicken. I don't eat chickens, but I eat chicken, and it's almost like
Yeah.
chicken is different than chickens. So it was interesting to actually, this child was actually talking about eating chickens because I think a lot of kids think that, chicken is different than chickens. They think of chickens on a farm, but they eat chicken and they don't actually connect it to chickens.
It's
Um,
just, it's unfathomable for most children. I mean, I remember it being unfathomable for me at the age of 11. So anything younger than that, and I guess it is difficult because I can say until I'm blue in the face that chicken has been killed, but really, unless they've watched or they understand what being killed is or means, it might still be difficult for them to place, especially for children who are so sheltered from anything violent, and rightly so in most cases. I just think it is difficult for them, and I think vegan children are quite lucky in a way that they have the truth explained to them, so much so that by the time they get to the an age of understanding what death is and the circle of life, that they've already connected those dots, and they probably won't feel the heartache that you and I probably felt when we realized what a tongue was.
yeah, yeah. Um, I actually, when I became a vegetarian, it was more environmental issues than actual animal issues, But then as you enter into this world, you start connecting the dots, and it all is so connected that it's hard to separate environmentalism with
Oh, absolutely,
animal
absolutely.
cruelty.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's all
I
just
do describe myself as an environmentalist now. Um, because I feel as though, like you said, we are so connected, we are all one, and I just genuinely don't think that you can be an environmentalist unless you are vegan. I think because the issues that I speak about in my book are so interlinked. And so I think for whatever reason a person or a child decides to go vegan, in the end it all comes down to just that oneness and that connectivity. My older brother actually became a flexitarian and then a plant-based eater, and he kind of hop, skipped and jumped to veganism because for him originally it was environmental, but now they go on animal rights marches, and they've reduced their plastic as we have. And so I just think it is, like you say, just that connectivity. We are all one, everything is connected, and I'm delighted to be in that kind of community.
Sure. Now, you actually are you currently a teacher as well? Are you a teacher?
So I'm not working as a full-time teacher now. I qualified in the early 2000s, and I worked as a primary school teacher for many years, and then I became the coordinator for children with special needs in the school where I spent most of my career. And I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. I love being a teacher. I love being around children and inspiring children and working as a team to, for that collective reason of making sure that everybody progresses and is happy. And so it was a really fulfilling career for me. But then when I became vegan, it just became so apparent that my new ethics were beginning to clash with this profession that I absolutely loved. I was having to teach things that I didn't think children should be taught about, and I was having to be in an environment where school food was being served to children that I knew was detrimental to their health. And so I found it really difficult to remain as a teacher working full time, because I just wanted to devote my entire life to veganism. And so I did, for a few years, step away from the profession. And I actually opened a vegan restaurant in my local town for a couple of years. But it was only when my daughter started full-time education that the calling of educating came back to me, especially when we had a few bad experiences when she first started because of our veganism. So I became an education consultant. My specialism is vegan inclusion, and I've been doing that now for about almost 3 years.
Wow, that's really interesting. What was it specifically, when you said there was things that you had to teach that clashed with your vegan ethics? What specifically was that?
So it mainly fell under the categories of science when we were talking about food and nutrition and what was healthy, and the kind of, teaching where food comes from and skipping around that truth. So there was a lot of that, but there was also, when we were talking about English literature for younger children, it's usually based around nursery rhymes, and specific stories. Old MacDonald had a farm, and things that I'm not sure if that's a familiar nursery rhyme to you over in America, but it probably is. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I caught a fish alive, and it was just becoming really, really obvious to me that we were having to teach children that the use and abuse of animals is okay. We were writing topics about the ocean, and then taking busloads of children to aquariums, and then teaching topics about the zoo, and again taking busloads of children to go and visit zoos. And I was just, when I became vegan, and I realized that there is absolutely no way you can justify there's just no way of justifying it. I genuinely deeply believe that that children should not be learning in any way, shape, or form that it is ever okay for animals to be used or abused for our gain. And that feeling just became too strong. I didn't want to teach about the circus. I didn't want to watch 300 odd children eating pork sausages every afternoon. And so that's when I decided that I couldn't be in that environment anymore.
Uh-huh. And have you actually found a market as a vegan consultant? Because I'm thinking, here in the States, I can't imagine a school. I don't know of a school that would really hire a vegan consultant. I mean, I could be wrong, sure, but I'm just, I find that very uplifting and encouraging.
Well, it is and it isn't. I provide my services for free. So what generally tends to happen is a parent. I mean, the United Kingdom is relatively small compared to the United States, and so for me to travel far north or far south, really, we're only talking about 5 or 6 hours. And what I do is any parent up and down the country who feels that their child is not being included, or that their teacher just doesn't understand veganism, or they aren't getting the right foods, they tend to contact me, and then I contact the school and I introduce myself and I tell them that I'm non-judgmental and that I'm a teacher and a parent, and I'm coming in using my skills that I learned as the coordinator for special needs. So I know that you're all busy and that you don't want to be told what to do. And I just sell myself as, it's free. It's free CPD, your continuous provision. You are learning. What have you got to lose? And I put this really, this informative email together, and I contact the head teacher of that school. And because it's free, they and the teacher, I guess, some ignore my first email. And then I'll speak to the parent and say, it's been a while since we emailed the school. Perhaps you should pop your head in, and then I'll email again. And so sometimes the parent and I have to work together to come at a couple of angles. But I guess, if you are a caring teacher who wants the best for each one of your individual pupils, then if somebody's offering you free training so that you can learn more about their perspective, I think that you'd have to be silly to turn that down, really. And the reason why I have chosen to do it at zero charge is just because of the importance that I put on the content. If there is one family within one school who feel happier knowing that their teachers fully understand their perspective and will work hard to incorporate that into their lessons, then I've done my job. But going back to your original question, if I thought they had to pay for it, I don't know if I'd get into as many schools as I do.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It's my form of activism, and I work part-time here and there, and to fund it. And so I think being a free resource is what really helps me to get into more schools.
Right. Yeah, I do some cooking with, I am a consultant with the Whole Kids Foundation, which is the nonprofit leg of Whole Foods Markets. I don't know, you probably don't have them in the UK, but they're very big here. They're our biggest health food store chain. And they teach, and they've trained me, and I go into schools and will give free cooking classes to teachers and faculty on plant-based cooking. And it's not just plant-based, it's plant-based, and it's oil-free and salt-free, and so it's really, really a healthy diet. Not necessarily the comfort food that I was talking about earlier in my show, but it's really excellent skills to learn. I've learned so much from it. I mean, even though I still am doing comfort food and maybe using some fats. I use so much less oil now when I do a stir fry than I used to, because I've learned
Me
how
too.
to also use water to help stir fry things, and you don't have to keep adding more water. You can
Yeah.
deglaze the pan with water or wine or broth to keep the cooking going and not use so much oil. So that's been really great. And also, I've gotten into schools also because it's free, and that certainly
Yeah.
helps. Now,
It really,
in your
really does.
7% of the UK are vegan now. That's amazing.
Well, that was a statistic from 2017. So if I was to put money on the statistics that we would probably put out round about now, I'd put it as much higher, probably about 20%. I think there's a few things in the last few years since, well, I think it was probably beginning of 2018 that figure came out. I do apologize. But I think a few things like the Game Changers movie and even this pandemic that we're amongst, it's I think the number would really, really raise. I think I'd probably put it at about 10%. It's just everywhere. It's exploded.
So
There are, every restaurant that you go to, every supermarket that you're in now, there are vegan aisles everywhere, plant-based this, plant-based that. And so it really does feel like when I communicate with schools and ask if I can come in and speak to the staff about veganism, that it's not this entirely strange concept that they have absolutely no idea about anymore, because it is being discussed a lot more in the media and in programs. We were watching a comedy, my husband and I, the other day, and they mentioned a vegan character, and it's just becoming the norm. And so it does feel as though there are so many conversations about veganism now happening in the wider world that it gives me kind of a shoehorn into schools. And it's great to see just how many people just in my small town where I live are vegan. When I opened my restaurant in 2015, all these vegans coming out of the woodwork that I didn't even know in my small kind of, I live in a really rural village almost in Greater Manchester. And yeah, so I can't wait to see the next real kind of statistics on how many vegans there actually are. Be interesting.
I just Googled the U.S. and they say 2% of Americans say they are vegans in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a big country, so it's really growing. I mean, when I first became a vegetarian, honestly, I had never even met a vegetarian when I became a vegetarian. It was like I didn't even know there was that option. Again, I'm going back into the 1970s, so it's really, I have watched it grow immensely. And I also was not even vegan. I was pescatarian for many, many years. I was vegetarian, then I became pescatarian. I added fish in because I, thought when I was pregnant I wouldn't have enough protein, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know enough, and only recently became really, could I say, I'm vegan. Even though that's how I leaned, it's definitely been a transition for me in this new year, and it's really been great. And I love the challenges. For me as a chef, I love the challenge of finding the alternatives and making things that I made before that had eggs in it or dairy in it, and what can I substitute? And
it's
to learn
incredible.
It's
I sometimes I think about, could I have been a vegan chef, just because I get so excited. I mean, there's a lady trending on Twitter and other social media platforms at the moment for making carrot bacon. I don't know if you've seen her video, but yeah, it's just, she gets so excited about making carrot bacon, and I can so appreciate that. The first time I ever made tofu scramble, it was like a revelation to me, and I think it is exciting finding things like seitan and edamame beans and all these new products that, I mean, I had a very, very bland, very, very bland diet as a vegetarian. Most of the food that I ate was just beige, eggs and cheese and bread and butter
I say
and
that when I
just
first became a
beige.
vegetarian, I went on the white diet. Basically, I took
Yeah, you
out.
call it the white diet. I call it the beige diet. So we know exactly where we're coming from with that.
Right,
It wasn't very healthy at all. And now
right.
there's just so much color and vibrancy, and we had jambalaya tonight, which was great. And it's just I'm just so lucky for my daughters. She's growing up with all of this, and it's great. There's a lot of kids who go to school like. You were just talking about beforehand, children go to the canteens and yeah, the food I'm not sure is adequate for the masses at the moment, but perhaps that will change.
Right.
I'm certainly working on it
So,
in this
Laura, we're
country.
going to take a couple-minute break, and when we come back, I'd like to really delve some more into your book, because you have lesson plans in here. You have so much information. I'd love you to share some of that with my listeners. So everyone listening, don't go anywhere. If you've just joined us, my guest is Laura Chepner, author of Veducated, an Educator's Guide for Vegan Inclusive Teaching. We'll be right back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. You're listening to Bhavani at iEat Green on the Progressive Radio Network. And if you're just joining us, my guest today is Laura Chepner. She's the author of Veducated, an Educator's Guide for Vegan Inclusive Teaching. And we are just going to delve into the book right now. So can you share with us some of the things that you bring up in your book? I know you have great lesson plans in here. You have some things as far as language to avoid that could feel challenging to a child who is vegan. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the reason why I wrote the book initially was because I thought it was really important for teachers and educators just to firstly understand what veganism is. And so my first chapter it's an explanation really, nothing too deep or gory, just an explanation as to kind of the 4 reasons why a vegan family or child, a family or a child may become vegan. And so I touch on animal rights, health, environment, and compassion, because I just think in order for a teacher to differentiate for a child in their learning and teaching, then they have to understand those reasons. And once the teacher has understood those reasons, I then go on in chapter 2 to talk about how they can make their environment more vegan inclusive. So taking all of those taking those 4 reasons into account, then perhaps what can they change in their curriculum planning? So do they have to teach about the zoo or the aquarium or the circus, or can they instead teach the same key skills through natural habitats like the pond or the river or the ocean, which, means that the children do still get to learn about animals, but in their natural habitats. Because I understand why teachers teach using animals as their muse, because animals are the best friends that children have from being very young. When they're in their crib and they've got their little piggy or their bunny, children absolutely love animals. And so what I basically just provide are lesson plans and topic plans that teachers can use so that they get to teach the key skills without having to upset the vegan children having to sit through topics that they find uncomfortable. And I also talk about things like cooking and baking in class and how that can be inclusive. Why doesn't the entire class just make a cake with vegan ingredients so that, it's easier for the teacher. They only have to get one set of ingredients. The children don't know any better, but the vegan child is included. I talk about class pets and kind of why that isn't a great idea, looking, at the animal's perspective. And And I go on just talking about all aspects of school life and how if they perhaps just changed their language ever so slightly, maybe perhaps not talking about the bacon sandwich they had for breakfast and just being a little bit more mindful. That's all I ask of them. Please be more mindful of the fact that you have a vegan child in your class, and try not to sing songs, nursery rhymes, read stories that might upset them, which of course include animals in captivity. And then I go on to close in my final chapters by talking about what the overall benefits of you being vegan inclusive will be to the entire school. Because when you become vegan inclusive, you're basically eradicating animal abuse and use from your curriculum and your conversation. And I think generally that creates a happier and more respectful environment. And so that's basically how the book is laid out. And it really is written from a teacher's perspective for teachers who I know are busy people and haven't got time to sit down and read a massive book on the subject. But I think from start to finish, it really does it provides hints and tips that teachers and educators can find useful if they want to just go that step further for the vegan child in their class.
Now, when it comes to, like school birthday parties, do they do that in the UK? Have, celebrate children's birthdays in class?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we're supposed to have healthy school status up and down the country where really we're not supposed to bring in sweets and cakes and things like that. But teachers do still do that. And I just touch on basically, if you do have any kind of celebration or cultural day or anything like that, if the entire thing can't be vegan or plant-based, then at least just ensure that you've got a cupboard at the back of the room. And I've written in the book that as a vegan parent, I was more than happy at the beginning of each term or semester to take in a bag of vegan treats that they just have in a back cupboard, just so that the vegan child doesn't feel left out. Should people have a celebration in the class and there isn't anything for them. And I think, when I go to birthday parties outside of school, I'm always texting, if I can bring something, let me know. And I guess it's just about just giving teachers the heads up that, if you've got a child in your class who's constantly being forgotten about, even if it's not constant, perhaps it's maybe just once a term or once a semester, then they're going to start to feel really let down by the end of that academic year. And so yeah, I do touch on that, and the fact that that little cupboard at the back of the room is really, really useful for inclusivity.
And what about like when it comes to baking a cake? Actually, in your book, you have some tips for that as well, don't you?
Yeah, so throughout the book, I recommend other books that have made life easier for me, because I'm a new vegan. I'm only 6 years in, and so all of the really useful resources that I've collected and collated over the years, I've recommended them throughout the book. And so I with the baking, I give hints and tips about perhaps using chia seeds or rapeseed oil and other things like that to bind. And then I point the person who's reading the book, the teachers, point them towards other cookery books and things that I've found useful that they can use. It's basically just, part of my hints and tips about how you can be vegan inclusive. And really, as you'll know, it's not that difficult to substitute one ingredient for another. And like I said before, sometimes for the teacher, if you've got 2 lots of children making 2 lots of things, it can sometimes make the lesson more difficult. Whereas if you were to bake plant-based, then you're already not just including the vegan children, but also the children who potentially are lactose intolerant or have an allergic reaction to eggs. And so it's kind of the safer option to go plant-based. And so yeah, I talk about that and how easy it can actually be to do plant-based instead.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's so important. And, it's really, like you said, it's just giving people tips so that they know where to go to find the
Yeah.
information. But with the internet, all of this is so much easier. Have you checked into any of the schools that you've visited, like a year after or something like that, to see has it made change in the classroom? Has it changed kids' behaviors at all? Has there been any positive influence that the teacher was able to document or record? Have you heard of any of that?
So it's funny you should say that, because what I've had predominantly are just emails from the parents who I've been working on behalf of, to say, like, I got a really funny email a couple of weeks back saying, you guys have custard, right? Do you guys have custard? Of course you do. You, oh my goodness, they've got custard, vegan custard in the canteen. Like, you could tell in her voice as she was emailing me that she's never been so happy in her life. My little boy is so delighted. They've got vegan custard, like all these exclamation marks all over the email. And it's just little things like that. But in actual fact, I really am, I think the very first school that I went to visit, probably about 2 years ago now, I'm going to schedule to speak to in September, which is the beginning of our academic year. And so, especially with the schools in our country being shut now, I think it's something that I'm really going to look forward to doing come September, because I do mention in the book that it might very well be a slow process, because there's a lot of information in the book that might be very, very new and very, very unfamiliar to the reader. And so I say, take things slowly. Don't expect too much too soon from yourself. And so I think if I do it in 2-year blocks, getting back in touch with them, it will really begin to show kind of what differences they've made. But I've seen in my daughter's school the difference that they've been able to make in just 2 years, which is phenomenal. They are really vegan inclusive, and I've been in to talk to their staff. And so, yeah, it's going to be a really, really good schedule starting in September, where I'm going to actually be able to kind of dip my toe back into schools I've previously visited. I'm really excited about that.
Because there's lots of projects where they've actually been able to document, when the community eats vegetarian. I don't know if it's all just vegan or just vegetarian, but there's less fighting, there's more aggressive behavior, which is also connected. I know they've done this in some jails, where they've had some pilot projects, where they've, done gardening, they've done more vegetarian cooking, and the result has been, more peaceful interactions amongst the people. And I was just wondering if has anyone documented that or seen a difference in how kids are getting along, if there's a change like that. There's two plant-based schools here in New York City, in Queens, that they only serve plant-based food, and that's a result of an organization called the Coalition for Healthy School Food, and they are promoting plant-based foods in schools, and actually a couple elementary schools in New York, Queens, are all plant-based, and I know that they have said that there's been a difference in the kids on the playground and things like that.
Wow, that's so interesting. I'm actually starting my master's in education in September as well, and I've been looking for something really interesting and different to study. Yeah, you may have handed me something quite interesting there.
Yeah. And it makes sense to me. I mean, they talk a lot about, the aggressiveness and the opposite of compassion,
Yeah.
when you're eating meat, and, you're eating all that adrenaline and that anxiety that the animal had in it right before being slaughtered when you're eating it. And so, eating a more compassionate diet would make sense to me that, that would trickle down to people's behavior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, 100%. And I wish we had plant-based schools in the area here. Maybe I'll start one day. They sound amazing.
Food, because that's really what they are promoting. They used to be the New York Coalition for Healthy School Food, and now they've gone, throughout the country, so they're not just New York based. So they're really doing some great work. So is your book available in the U.S.? I know you sent me my copy. Thank you so much. But can you get it through Amazon or small bookstores here in the U.S.? Do you know?
Yeah. Yes, it is. So I was really lucky to have worked with the vegan publishers on this project, and they are based over in the United States, Massachusetts, and they. I know that the release date in the United Kingdom is the back end of August. I would imagine in the States you guys could probably get it much quicker than that. So because there isn't the Atlantic to cross. So yes, it's on Amazon at the moment. And you can buy it either hard copy or ebook, or you can buy it directly from the vegan publisher's website as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you said you had jambalaya tonight for dinner.
Yes.
What's into your jambalaya? Because I make a jambalaya as well.
What went into it? So the usual base, the onions, garlic. I had some paprika, oregano, thyme. Just thinking my mind back now. I put in black beans and kidney beans, tomatoes, and some mixed wild rice. And then I went a bit rogue, and I sprinkled some chipotle into it as well, which gave it a little bit of a smoke. And I think that was pretty much it. I had it on the side with some roasted sweet potato wedges as well. It was a New Orleans inspired evening with some corn on the cobs.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Laura, we're just about out of time. Can you share with my listeners how they can reach you if they have any questions? And that's it. I just want to thank you so much. But go ahead, share with everyone how they can get in touch with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been my absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so very much. So my consultancy kind of name is Primary Veducation. So that's spelled as primary education with a V. And I'm on all social media platforms. My email is hello@primaryveducation.com. And I will gladly assist anybody who may feel that they would like, even if it's across the Atlantic, their teachers just to know a little bit more about veganism. I can help anyone, so please do reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you. And I will certainly share all your links on my website. So if anybody didn't get that down, you can find it on my website at iEatgreen.com. But Laura, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking with you immensely, and I really congratulate you on your book, and the work you're doing is so important, and keep it up. It's great.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you. And everyone out there,